We generally agree that exhibitions are a display of works of art and objects. They are also an opportunity to display items of interest that add depth, providing the narrative behind the artworks and objects, so often seen out of context to the ideas that lie behind the pieces. In Re-Use and Re-Imagine Adornment, 9 makers, all artists in their fields, jewellery, silversmithing, textile art and lace making, they took on the challenge of making new works. Through the reuse of 10 metres of white linen, their work discussed adornment, values, relationships, materiality, culture and industry. The blank canvas of linen was a starting point. It became a conversation that brought together the different approaches through common themes, and it allowed the makers to draw out the potential of their ideas through the materials in their own distinct languages. The artworks and background research were seen together, rather like evidence showing the messy routes taken when trying to reach for that sense of an idea. We have become so dependent on the written word. There's often a danger of missing the subtle language of things. Making is an expression of thoughts. It's the measuring and analysis of materials and processes that, when they're combined with skill and artistry, can speak with its own sensitivity and real power.
First of all, thank you very much to every single one of you for coming out on this rather September day when we've had dry season all summer, and it's lovely to see you all. And we're just going to try and make this as conversational as possible, whilst having a structure, which let's see how that goes, folks. But really, to give you a little bit more of an insight into why the exhibition is here and what the aims of our group are, partially, but not overindulging. So the title is Re-Use and Re-Imagine Adornment, and we're in our space, just in case anybody is lost, but also for those that are watching, Our Space Gallery in Lisburn, and we have to say a huge thank you to them for hosting the exhibition and inviting us to do this again. Applied Arts is in need of lots of support, and we will take what we can get, and hopefully we've made this an exhibition which talks about the process of how these applied artists come about ideas and work with materials, because it's something that's not normally exposed except to an elite group. And we'd like to think that we are all geniuses who have these great ideas that just hit us like bolts out of the sky, but that's not really the truth at all. It's hard work, much endeavour and much trial and failure, and seeing the successes and magic in those little hidden moments that we really treasure the most and that move us from one level of making to another. So hopefully we will be able to delve under the bonnet, because cars are relatively topical today for me, of both what Céline does, Celine Traynor and Stuart Cairns, and I'll throw in a little bit of penny's worth along the way. So linen has a very deep social and cultural history in Northern Ireland, so it's nice to be in the linen rooms, and the project began by a tour of the museum. And that led to, I suppose, Céline having a particular approach in her work, which really, I went back and looked through everything that you were doing historically, and she's got such a beautiful rhythmic way of working, normally. And I was just curious to see how that interest in movement and rhythm first, came across as a notion that you might tackle through linen, what we saw, the words we agreed to kind of stick within the remit of, and how you went away and made sense of this, particularly that notion of preciousness and value. So take it away.
Yeah, so when I first heard the word linen and that we were going to reuse the linen that we used for the backdrop for the last exhibition, my feeling for linen is goes back to my granny gave us a tablecloth a long time ago. Well, I gave it to my mother gave it to us, and we still use that tablecloth on special occasions. So that's how I first, that was my first sort of thought. I was a little bit concerned about what I was going to be doing. I don't really work with multimedia, very much metal, very much jewellery. So it was a challenge, and one that I was prepared and ready to take up. So we came here that first Saturday. We went down to the Lisburn Museum and had a great tour, and it really opened my head up to what this was all about. And to be honest, I just didn't really give linen. It's going to sound terrible, but I didn't give linen very much of a thought. I would have thought linen not contemporary, not something I wouldn't really be much involved with textiles at all. So we had a great tour. I really enjoyed the tour, and what struck me going round, and I sort of had this in my head as well about linen, was the human conditions, the socio-economic side of it, the way that people were, the workers, how they might have been treated, that hierarchy, that there was somebody making lots of money from this, and some people that were not very well treated throughout most of the processes. So that hit me, a very visceral feeling, and I felt that that's where this is the strongest sort of feeling that I have going through the museum. But then we came across the punch hole machine, and I have to say, I homed right into that machine, and I homed right into the processes, and the results, the punch cards. It was got to do with the Jacquard loom, and it was about putting on the patterns onto the linen. Very complex, very sort of difficult to grasp, I felt. So we came back here and we had a good discussion, and the words were coming out. And I think I wasn't the only one that was very sort of taken by that visceral side of it. I'm looking at you with your toe rot, and Shannon's piece with the pain involved, and I think we all talked about that. The teeth, the marks in the teeth for pulling the threads, and the sores, and I was very much thinking about the poverty, and these were our forefathers, and the treatment was desperate. The poverty, the child deaths, the child labour, the factory acts. I wanted to look more into that, but I was still holding on to this, the process, the tool that really grabbed me. That I'm not a big fan of tools, I have to say. I'm not, love tools. I love what tools can do, but I'm not great. But I love this tool. I really did like that punch machine, and somebody took a really good video of it, so I was able to that was yourself. I think I was talking in the background as well, asking all the questions of the day. And just to say, I did go back as well, because I needed to understand this more. I'm jumping ahead there because we had a conversation here, and there was a lot that day. I don't know if we were all, I'm looking at the few that are involved here. There was a lot of information. I found it quite mind-boggling, and there was a lot to think about, and it was a great look insight into linen. So I needed to go away. I know it was collaboration, I thought we had a great collaborative day that day. We did talk a lot about this visceral feeling. I think a lot of us had it. But also there was a couple of things said that day as well about you had the slides on your presentation. Was it a handkerchief at the end?
I had an image of a tablecloth.
A tablecloth, yeah.
Tablecloth.
And it was all wrapped and well, it wasn't starched, it was obviously, I found that out later, it's just ironed very well and folded back, and the logo of the makers or whatever on it. So that lodged in there somewhere. And also something that you said as well, Teresa, about that you don't look at your work as precious anymore, which actually I think shocked us all as well. So that made me think, I work with precious materials. I would love to loosen that. I'd love to loosen that, and especially I was coming out into this exhibition on the back of 3 very difficult, stressful commissions that I had. Very technically stressful, and also just getting this right. So I went away, and I think that was the first thing I thought, I am not going to be using, I'm not going to be soldering, I am not going to be at the bench as much as I have just been for the last 3 months here. And so that was with me, the ideas of the poverty and all. I was quite sort of strong about that. I was reading up a lot about that, and you know, the words were very important. I was writing down a lot. I felt that the first couple of weeks I was writing a lot, doing a couple of sketches, and still not knowing exactly what I was going for. I didn't know what materials I was going to use. I just didn't know. And I think this is the word that's been used, the messy period, that sort of messy time of what am I actually going to do here? So I really enjoyed the process as well. And so I even find myself waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it and coming down and writing notes and still sort of trying to get it all together. So it started to become a bit apparent then what materials I might be wanting to use. I love the see-through graph paper down there, the engineering sort of graph paper, you know, that I thought had that sort of like loom look, that weave, weft and warp, weft and warp. So I was moving away from this is so annoying and all this that happened, the poverty, so I was sort of becoming softened a wee bit, and I was sort of thinking, right, how will these match? What materials will I use, and how will it fit into what I'm thinking? So the word precious, I think I had a conversation with you, Jewellery is my poet friend here, and I had a couple of words with you about it, just what would be a good collective word here. So precious, come on. I was not intending to use precious materials, so you know, I think that was sort of like a tongue-in-cheek thing, that, you know, precious, is it? It's going to take a lot of time to come up with these pieces, but they're not going to be of precious materials that cost a lot. So that was one thing. I also like the idea of precious, going back to your idea of that precious piece put in the bottom drawer and not taken out again except special occasions. That resonated with me. And also just that precious, these precious people were, some of them treated so badly, you know, so I mean, that I felt that I was getting that wee bit of social aspect into it as well. I also did something else that my mom then once I said, linen, what do you know about linen? My mum told the story of when she was young, my mum lived on a farm, and about my granddad doing the growing the linen, growing the flax every sort of 7 years or whatever, and getting government funding for this. And I recorded my mother say this story, and it was a lovely story actually. It was quite like, running through the blue flowers that they were growing. It sort of took the focus away from that horrible side of it that I was thinking. I also asked an old gentleman that I know, 92-year-old, whose family would have worked in the linen industry. If I can remember correctly, his uncle was he checked for imperfections in the linen, the made linen. So that was quite interesting. I recorded him as well. So another angle to the preciousness. I find this very precious, to have my mother's voice on video, and the old gentleman who's really not doing very well at the minute as well. And so another angle to the precious. So that's how that's where it came about. The materials that I used then started to come quite easily, quite naturally then afterwards. As I said, I used the graph paper. I was emulating the table with the graph paper on, with the design on it. Then it was translated into the whole maker, and then it was then translated into the boards. So it sort of all came quite easily then after this weeks and weeks of thinking, weeks and weeks of research, and starting to play with the materials as well. And this is someone who's used to metal and used to piercing and soldering and whatever. It was quite a release. It was lovely. So it started off with the piece down there that I wanted to get that lovely flow again. You mentioned that fluidity. I also like the connections. I love, as a jeweller, I love to make necklaces and things that connect. So there was quite a nice angle with how these connected, with the treasury tags that I used there, and just how tight they would be, how much of a curve it would be. It was reminiscent of the linen coming out of the loom, etc. And then that, the flowery designs that were on the thing that was there, that was set up. I think that's just for exhibition purposes, that flowery design, and then therefore on the pieces that we saw in the museum. Again, I like this direct putting these words on, saying something, as opposed to flowery design. So that again sort of fed into my, that sort of social comment and whatever as well. And then that led to, I wanted to do something with the boards then, the pressed out boards, or the holes, what is it called? The
punch cards.
Punch card boards, punch cards. And so, as I say, I went back and I spoke to Alison, who clips around there, and I wanted her to explain it really well. How does that translate onto that, and how does that translate onto the loom? To be honest, I still don't particularly understand it. It's based on that old computer, that the old Babbage computer. That's what Babbage, the other way around. Babbage based his on the Akard loom, and so that really interested me as well. I also loved. Again, I was drawn to it. I was drawn to those punch cards, that hardness. Back again to my own jewellery and whatnot. Not the soft looms, not the nice threads, and But so I did a cheeky thing, and I asked her, would she please punch out a couple of cards for me, do all 600 holes, and how I know that is it's 12 by 51. I got my mathematical nerdiness out there with that. I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well. I hated maths at school, but since designing and whatnot, maths has become a lot more prevalent in my designs, and so she quite happily accepted the challenge and made me 4 boards. Well, I had to sort of go through the red tape as well, but I picked those up from her, and I have to say I did make her a little pair of earrings as well, just literally with a wee round punch in silver that she loved, as a sort of like a, you did something for me, here you go, bit of bartering, we're all used to that as jewellers and as makers. So that was I thought that was a lovely, again, that social contact as well was good. So with these punch cards, I could visualise this. I wanted to sort of them to say something as well. So I could visualise the dot matrix typeface that I could do out the letters, and again using the word precious. I then had to work out what was I going to do rods wise, what was I going to use to sort of make these, and pricing all of that, and it was becoming very expensive with getting things sent over. I couldn't get it here, get stuff sent over from England. Was it Brexit? Whatever. It was costing 4 times the price to actually post it than it was for the pieces, so I was like, no thank you, so I went back to the drawing board, and the nails then hit me. I looked up B&Q, you can get 5.5 mil round nails, so I thought that's great, because that would also reflect the combs that again yourself, Teresa, you were influenced by the combs. And I also thought then when I made it, now I didn't do exactly what I wanted to do. The boards, I had 4 boards and I wanted it to be at different angles, at different distances, and I wanted it to be more blocky. But they all came together like that, and there's a lovely wave in it as well. It was unintentional with the pressure. And so that's, I made an object.
So it's kind of like a conversation between you, your intention, and the material, and the finances.
Yes, very much so. Very much so, the finances. And if I can tell you a wee story like that now as well, I was talking to Sarah at the end of her talk there a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying, like, it's fantastic, it was such a release for me not to have to have a massive bill at the end of this for the price of gold. Anybody that's working in the silver knows, and especially now. So, and I was like, everything that I made here, and spoiler alert here, was about £150. And she looked at me, and I was going, I know, isn't it fantastic? And she went, oh, that much? £150? And I said, Sarah, are you joking? £150 is nothing. £150 might give the solder, so, that's the things we're up against with, working with precious materials. So back to the piece, I made an object is what I was, that's new on me. It wasn't a piece of jewellery, it wasn't, I was a bit sturdy object, it sort of reminded me of the looms and whatnot. There was sort of like a real, blocky thing and all that I loved of it. Then those, again, what I learned when I went back to Alison, the holes punched, then they correlate. There's a horizontal and vertical here in fact, I have it written off. If anybody is nerdy enough that wants to read it, they will actually get the actual mathematics of how the 12 by 51 and, for example, the P at the beginning there had, it was blank, 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 nothing in the holes. The holes are there, but in the actual boards, there wouldn't be holes there. It's just the holes for the actual. But I got it just to do so that I could play with this. I still didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. So it would be blank, 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 and then there's with the dot matrix, which I also thought is a great informative typeface as well. I like that. I like graphics as well. I'd be, I'm attracted by graphics and graphic design as well. So that sort of has like 5. I can't work it out there, but let's say 3 blank, 5 with the holes filled, and then 2. Whatever. I'm not doing my maths right there. So I translated that into I ordered my plastic beads, square beads. Again, what
And that's really safe. Plastic.
Yes, I've never ordered plastic beads in my life before. It was some of them are actually a wee bit. The white ones are actually a bit more expensive than the red ones, but they were literally pence.
Yeah.
With pence, I could make something that size. So it was a revelation. It was great. So the word precious then is translated onto this piece. So if you're looking at that, the first 12 sections, the orange splits each 12 section, and the first are all white, relating to blank, and then you see there where it starts, and that's the sort of like that part of the P. The next one is the next line with what is text. Right, I'm not explaining this very well. It's hard to explain. It's complicated. The process is complicated, so if you want to read up and see exactly what it is, but some of you might have caught it already what I'm talking about, and I just did that over and
It is.
Yes, it is, yeah, and it's split into 51. There are 51 12-section beads there. So the orange thread then relates to again we spoke about this on the first day, and the orange storage stains that appeared, that I was very relieved about, because my said granny's tablecloth had this bit of orange marking on it, that I thought I did it. I thought I had did it beside a rusty nail or something, and I've done that to my granny's. It's lasted so long that I'm going to this, so
Yeah.
quite relieved about that. I was quite relieved about that. So
It's quite interesting. I think what we forget is that linen is a living organism, if you like, and so it has so many other properties. And we forget that it behaves in particular ways in the damp, in the musty, so it's quite good to remind ourselves, isn't it?
yeah, and I was relieved to know where this came from.
Yeah.
So it
Not
was
your fault.
It was not my fault. So hence then, it's rot, basically. It's rot. So I introduced the orange linen thread again, sourced that. Again, all this sourcing, I'm not used to that. I know what Cookson's is, and I know the number to cook for Cookson's, and I've never sort of had to really sort of go outside of Cookson's, maybe for tools or whatever. But so that was quite interesting. That took a lot of time as well to source things that you wanted. So anyway, yes, so I used that and didn't know what to. I wanted some sort of relation to the loom, and hence I put the rest of the thread on to that. And the final thing then, which is down at the bottom, which is a silver plate with precious in the dot matrix typeface drilled out. Now that is the only piece of precious metal, precious material. Precious in the word precious, costing, so it actually did cost more than anything else, and it's just a little 12 by 5 piece of silver, and I chose it. I could have used copper, I could have used brass, but I chose it just from a colour point of view. I thought it stood out better, and also I just thought it's nicer to drill silver than it is copper with all the bits, so I was resorting to my knowledge of metals there, and I had to sit at the bench for the first time for the whole thing. The rest of the time I was down and I had taken over our dining room. That's where everything else was made. And so that was the final thing. Then the stencil, again, I love the idea of Banksy and those stencils and those social comments, social commentary that he makes as well. So I like that connection as well. And finally, I asked Anne for a piece of the linen at the very end. So you probably wondered, oh, we didn't have to use the linen. Sometimes didn't use the linen. But finally, on the last day, I asked you for the piece of linen to fit into the little drawer that I had found that would do the purpose. And I copied your slide with the folding back and revealing the word precious written on that.
So it's really, really interesting way of working, which is so strategic and very considered and organised.
Eventually.
Right, so you're saying it felt messy to you. I can see it really, that rhythm I mentioned at the beginning, I can see it happening in the way you carried out the final work. So once it clicked, even though it was in territory out of your usual remit, it clicked. And so moving on, I suppose, thinking at the opposite end of the spectrum, you won't mind me saying that, but Stuart's a much more intuitive thinker. And you respond to environment, material, and idea in a very much more holistic way. If you don't mind me putting it that way, it's more intuitive, and you think about it internally quite a lot, play with it a lot.
Yeah.
Mess about, and somehow you tease out this response, which is a very Stuart Cairns response. So do you want to elaborate now the notion of adornment and reusing linen, which you've used before, but how did it work for this project?
Very different from what Céline did.
Good.
Because I'm sort of listening like, well, was I supposed to do it that way? Which I think we did.
Sure.
I came in thinking, was I meant to do it more? Do you know what I mean?
Well, we all have different ways of working. My linen pops up in my work, has always popped up in my work. I messed about, I loved playing with linen thread when I was a kid. So we had an old Singer sewing machine in the house, and had these wee drawers which were full of buttons and stuff. And I just like messing around with things and tying things and stuff. And there was some linen thread, this vintage linen thread, which I loved and messed with. And, did normal arty things with. It was like, slides for my action men when I was a kid and stuff like that. But when I went to foundation and was trying to use fine materials to use, I came back to this thread because it was really nice. Didn't have a clue, didn't really understand it all. And then I've continued to use it since then. So it's I use it for binding and tying quite a lot. Love the something about quality. So coming back to this one, we went. I thought, well, this would be good. This would be a good chance to make something new, to challenge yourself and come in. And you come in to these, you get a brief and stuff, and you start thinking about all these different ideas, and you look at what's sort of bubbling away in your practice. In terms of what Anne says, holistic practices, that's why I try and work. It's kind of life work, living sort of lifestyle work thing. So it means whenever I'm producing work, you're coming out of an established body of ongoing research. It's kind of a living thing, so it's not kind of stop-start. It's this sort of ongoing conversation with materials and investigation, and a lot of it is quite subconscious and as I say, intuitive. For this one, I thought, well, I'd done some work before on the industry. I visited the museum before. Two ways I work is through gathering materials, found materials, and my responses to the materials, and also object types. So the previous one, I responded very strongly with the materials as well, but with the object types that I found fascinating with the industry. There's a lot of little hand implements and the hackling blocks I found fascinating, so I sort of investigated those. So I didn't want to do that again. I think that's something I get very conscious about. But there's a lot of materials and materiality there that I want to explore. And I had these ideas of, there was some things that I sort of touched on in different exhibitions before that went with adornment and very, very literal. They were very worn pieces. Some big necklaces and stuff with foreign rope. I was doing that. I had these ideas of where I could push them on. I'd be doing larger pieces like headwear. And then I've done smaller pieces, which were brooches, but were kind of little drawn sketches.
Yeah.
Which were kind of ways of. I would look at kind of brooch forms as wearable drawings and opportunities to explore materials. So that was kind of bubbling away, and we went to the. You come with those ideas and you go to the museum, and then we all chat, see all this information. And again, it's a wall of stuff. There's so much interesting things. There's all the social aspects, there's all the processes, there's history of the place, history of the processes, how it affects people. And that's kind of a wall of information. So you sort of have to, I sort of tune out a little bit and then just see what sort of little things bed in and what sort of connects with me. I was taking pictures quite a lot and quite like the weights and the looms and things being tied and the physical materials as well in the industry. The flax, the dry flax silks which I found really fascinating to me. The quality of the thread as well. The amount of time put into it. There was something about hand blows as well, about smoothing or polishing the fabric or something. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Beetling of the linen to polish it down.
And of course my background being a silversmith, I'm all about hammers. So I was like, fascinating. So again, those sort of things connect. And then hearing what other people have talked about with their ideas and things. And I didn't really. It was supposed to be a collaborative process. I wasn't really able to collaborate as much as maybe I should have, or maybe I tend, because my practice is quite an ongoing holistic thing. It can be sometimes getting other people into it can be a bit jarring, and it can be difficult, quite difficult for me. Sometimes for me, the collaboration is the conversations around work and seeing what other people are doing and letting that influence you as well. So that was all kind of bubbling along, and so I knew that I really loved the thread, and I really loved the flax, the raw flax, the dry flax, and then the hackle, the flax having gone through the hackle, and that kind of hair-like form was fantastic as well. So I had to get the materials, so I had to start getting the materials together, and I had all these ideas about some of the things that came out of the process that I was reading about. So it was seaweed was mentioned and stuff in terms of treating the material. So I sort of gathered that and boiled it up and see if I could get anything exciting going on there. Didn't really work, just got quite serious. But I tried that. I also did, I sort of looked at what I had and what I could get. And for me, it didn't seem like there was enough. I was kind of sitting going, yes, weeks of work. I was like, weeks.
Work of writing.
Yeah. But so I was kind of juggling other work and then trying to fit this in, and sort of thinking, right, okay. And then I had my ideas of necklaces and drawings and things, but I thought, well, actually, a lot of those things are going back on what we did before, and I don't really have as much time as I would like to develop these things. So in those sort of times, you have to sort of cut back and go, right, okay, well, what can I do? So I'll do fewer pieces and then try and make them more statement pieces. And I had one of the materials that were most important. And I had I'd done some work previously, as I said, with linen for the Linen Biennale in Quebec. And I've gone over there and done some workshops over there and chatted with it's a very rural community, and they're keeping flax and linen production alive, so they're keeping their sort of culture alive. And Dominique Roy, who was the director who did that when I was there, she sent me afterwards, she sent me a little vacuum sealed packet with a little spool of handmade linen thread that they'd made on the project from the flax that they'd harvested. So they went through the whole process and it was just like, it sat there in my room for years, and I didn't want to, you don't want to just catch it open that and just, I'll just try this on something. So, but I thought, no, this is the time to use it. And it has I'm going to say on the work, it has a really lovely feel. It has that kind of almost grassiness. It is very much like a natural material, and I'm always drawn to natural materials.
Well, it is a natural material, but
you know what I mean. It's not like
it's manufactured.
You think of it more, it's more plant-like than thread-like in some way. Even in terms of the colour, and then of course with the dry flax, which I stole from Anne Earls Boylan, so quite. And then I also had this idea of using metal and trying to get the traces of the elements, traces of the thread, traces of the flax through the silver, as kind of that ongoing time that was put into it, and pressure and of the industry and all those things sort of mapped out physically on the material. And I kind of know how silver works, so if you put it through a rolling mill with whatever material you want to, it will lift imprint, that will take imprints on that. So it's quite a subtle thing. So I did that with a sheet of silver, milled it fine, and then put it through a couple of times, each time changing what was in the silver. So there's like a layer of marks building up. So it's kind of, it looks like printed together a bit leathery in terms of the surface, but it's a repeated process under pressure.
It looks like paper.
Yeah, it's very papery.
Isn't it beautiful the way you've done
it? It kind of comes away, it takes away from the silveriness, and it goes for this kind of white thing. So it's not, I don't use silver really because it's like precious and shiny, it's because it has this kind of really, to me it has a very kind of soft, warm quality and papery quality, and it's quite alive when it's, I think, when you treat it like that. So it's to turn that into a live thing and have this imprint of the materials, and for me trying to get that sense of industry through it. When we were in the museum, there was one of those rooms that was just noise and hammering, and so it just felt like a pressurized kind of thing to me. So that's, I suppose, how I was articulated. And then, so I had these kind of three ideas of materials. So I had the handmade linen thread, I had the flax, which I soaked, which is kind of like traditionally how they brought it down to make it sort of turn it into the linen thread. And I had silver. And so there were these things that I wanted to do 3 drawings with. So I wanted to give them an impact. So I made these 3 towers. So I've been doing this painting, which had these towers in, and then I started making the towers. But I haven't really done it with the towers. But I wanted to kind of bring in this kind of material language at the moment. The towers kind of reference a little bit of kind of human habitation. Really, that's what I'm thinking about. Is the presence of people through the structure they live in, whether it's kind of raised huts or towers or structures that kind of breathe vessels, elevated vessels, and act as also as elevated drawings, so they kind of they bring them to certain heights, so you see them a certain way, give the materials you use a certain presence. So I mean these 3 structures in steel, and the first one has the handmade thread wrapped around it. It was dipped in seaweed. The seaweed is juicy stuff. I don't know whether it had any effect, but that was the theory. Wrapped it around, and then it was given extra weight with these fine fishing weights. Again, kind of reference again the weighted sections of the looms. The second one, I took the soaked but not watered flax. I soaked it to make it softer, really, so sort of like a basket weaving technique. And I weaved it around the structure as well, trying to get the dried flower heads kind of frizzing out. Sort of trying to emphasise the bits on it that I kind of really love. And then the last one was just like a simple bit of silver folded around and tied on with a little bit of thread to kind of get this process. So that was it. It was kind of all that information. Yeah. It generally is with my work. It's kind of like it's things collected and processes, you know, that have been building up for years, and visual language that's been building up for years, and sense of materials and how you handle materials that you've built up over years, all that experience. So then it comes together quite quickly in terms of the objects that you put forward for exhibition. I think you asked me about the titles as well.
I did ask you about the titles, and quite, because you're quite specific about that, and
well,
it's quite forensic in a way when you see it against an object. It relies on imagination for the viewer.
I hate titling titling work. I hate titling objects. You ask me for titles for paintings. I just really don't like it. So you have to tell me something. So it is. I try and reason both during the thing, and trying to summon some words that kind of add to the association. So I think they called it 3 Stars, 3 Stories.
You did.
So it is 3 Stars. And the idea of 3 stories is it sort of goes back to stuff I looked at when I was doing my undergraduate degree. When I was making objects, I wanted to understand why people like the strange, weird objects that I made, or why they worked. And it was this idea that the objects are like kind of condensed stories. It's like, so people read objects, they try to understand them. So I'm trying to understand them, they start telling stories. So that's the whole idea, that they're kind of compressed stories.
So they actually are a language.
Yes.
Yeah. You did to that as well. But I'm going to pick you up on something because I'm picky. And it was about, you did weeks of nothing. You were writing, it wasn't work. And I'm kind of listening to Stuart, and I'm thinking, I'm going to pull you both up on, because work is multifaceted, isn't it? It's not. I think that, I said at the very beginning, there's an illusion that we all have objects that just appear in front of us, something magically made happen here. And even when you're speaking, that doesn't come about except through years of, I'm not going to name the number, many years of knowledge, tacit knowledge, intellectual thinking about it, reading, and also the international visual awareness of what's going on in that bigger world. I think those are the bits that we don't publish and we don't speak about, and I'm laughing when you're doing titles, I totally get that, because it means it to you at that moment in time. They go, oh, did I really think that? And you sort of cringe, but actually there's an expectation of both yourself and the audience to have that title.
Yeah.
Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, titling a text on it is kind of, well, to me, to add to the experience and give an extra layer to understanding or suggestion to the work. And the work art's a crazy weird thing. It's not, you can't actually just go, right, I've got this job to do, and I'm going to spend 5 solid days working on it, and at the end I really start. It's a nice way of thinking. It's work. Because usually you're mulling over stuff, and it's the stuff that you think about when you're on a walk 3 weeks later beside the scene. You're like, that's what I'm going to do. That's how it's going to work. It's all, it comes in flashes, and you have to kind of put a lot of information in and just let it stew for a bit sometimes, or we move through the writing and stuff.
Yeah, me too in the morning.
And that, but it'll come. There's like that's a process where you put the stuff in, it kind of ferments, and then suddenly it'll work and click. You know, I've had work where I've been telling finish a piece. It's only when I've walked away and given myself a little bit of space from it that I've actually come to a solution and come back to it.
Yeah.
You can sometimes just bash it through. So it's about investigating in different ways, giving yourself space to think, and then letting that process work.
What you said about shooting on, I found as well, I had to really mold over what was taken, and I had to sort of go away from it and come back from it as well. So that's how it worked.
So that's an important submarine going there. Okay, so I think that's quite an interesting kind of point that we're trying to move on and ask. Shane, if you had some questions that you wanted to ask Stuart about,
Yeah.
I mentioned the international thing.
Yes,
Stuart.
sure.
Some questions you wanted to ask him on that?
Yeah, so you exhibit here and abroad with your craft / art objects. You might have a better word to
Object, yeah.
How do you source the right fit exhibitions for your work, and where in the world do you find the best audiences, collectors for your work? Most makers, another part of that is as well is moving on from that. Most makers here have to diversify their businesses to survive. So what other strands do you have, and how do you get the balance right? I'm taking notes.
Right.
Right now from Stuart Cairns.
I think most of it's sheer blind luck. To be honest, I don't think there's any, and there's definitely no kind of quick fix button. Just press this, do this thing. No. A lot of it is just working hard, putting your work out there, and sending the video who sees it and who likes it. Some things came through applying to things. I think doing probably one of the most important things I did was do that in Biennale thing, which was, I really it wasn't a particularly massive show. It was good. It was a good show. It was we showed TV, but we showed in Quebec first. And it was Irish, it was a selection of Irish makers going over and showing in Quebec.
Irish Council?
Yeah, I think so, yeah, as far as I can remember. And there was an opportunity for people to go out and do that, which was great. I went to Birmingham, can't say for me, I did a 4-day workshop. But I think doing that, producing the work and putting it, again, you pitched your work, you got selected. Which was great. So that was a big thing. And then I think Crafts Council of Ireland had a call out for a portfolio, and I never really thought about it working because I was saying my work's pretty weird for them. But my friend Gail, she gave me a level and said, fire something in. So I thought, I can't do it. So I quickly fired something in, and off the back of that, I got selected for a portfolio. And then that opened up, started opening up things. So I showed my work, they took my work to collect one year, which is collect the International Craft Fair in London. And showed there, and honestly, I wasn't terribly sure how well it had gone. There was a lot of people chatting, but people assembled. We didn't really get any sales this year. They were a bit surprised, I'm pretty sure they had loads of sales.
Were these collectors?
These are collectors.
Gallery owners?
Yeah.
And individuals?
Yeah, so you have collectors from gallery owners, individuals coming in to look, to buy, and who knows what. But, it's all one piece, a small piece. Chatted to a few gallery owners, one or two, really not masses. Talked to a lot of people, generally, without really any agenda of who are you? Can you do something? None of that. I think just chatting and talking to people who are interested in the work. And then, but from that, you think, oh, nothing's happened from that. But from that, different connections have come for you. And I think I applied for a couple of exhibitions in Brighton. And again, some of your work's being seen multiple times, putting it out there. And then what's happened recently in the last maybe 5 years is 5, 6 years is things have come back from those different things. So, for example, I met Paul Perez from Jewellery, which is open, nothing to do with me.
It's hard, it's okay. It's true.
But I met him at Collect, and then he came over. He was doing a lecture at the University of Ulster, and we had a cup of coffee, and he chatted to me, and then I got an invite to send some work over to him to do a show. So then he held some of my work for a while. Didn't particularly well, didn't sell it for him, but he tried his best. And I also got there's a craft collective in Sweden, who one of their members had been to craft collect, and they invited. They were having once a year they have like international artists over, so they invited me over to do that. I was able to get some funding, in Stockholm, and so I was able to get some funding, go over, set the whole thing up, be there for a week, be in Stockholm, and sold a couple of pieces, but again not masses of stuff flying away. So I wasn't really sure how successful that was. But then something else came off back of that. So there's lots of it's about continually putting right. And I was able to use. I blogged quite a lot, and then on WordPress, and then I went on to Instagram a lot more. And now I'm thinking going back to WordPress. Social media was really good for a little while. I don't think it's particularly great now. I know. I think they're monetized it quite a lot, and it's made it very difficult for artists and makers to get their work out there, like having to pay for so it's a bit challenging. So I think a lot of artists now who are using it are looking at other ways. And I'm thinking of going back to blogging, maybe writing different, maybe writing some things, trying to get my physically, some sort of physical, so. It's all about doing the best what you can and getting it out in some way that you see, whether it's online or in exhibitions, and looking for opportunities that suit what you do, or you think you can do something.
You see these through looking up.
You get them through some of the mailouts from Craft NI or Congress of Ireland. Sometimes they were in Crafts magazine or some of the arts mailouts. So I think you sign up for those and kind of keep your eye out for those. But look for things. I think you should think about where you want to show.
Do you have anyone else here to bounce off? Did you hear about this? Is there anyone else? Yeah, right.
Not really. There's a lot. We're very lucky in now. There's a lot of really good makers and some really valuable international level makers. Derek's ceramics are fantastic. He's really well known. Alex Bruce, really good. I think we're also sort of busy. So I haven't seen those guys in. I can't remember the last time I saw those guys and we had a conversation.
They're big in Japan, it's minimalist is like you said, weird work. North America or Northern European is sort of like a good place for
it's sort of, what is it? I mean, I'm trying to think what it's summer to went to Japan, I've done really well. Next work I sent it over to the same gallery, didn't go so well.
So basically that's a business term speculating to
you have to push an awful lot of work. I have a lot of work out there with galleries, and galleries don't take your work and hold on to your work. So like in Japan there's maybe about 30 plus pieces. And I don't make an awful lot of work through the year. I might make 10 to 20 pieces tops. Maybe not even that, depends on the year and if I can get funding. Going back to your quite original question in terms of having various parts to your practice, I have numerous other things. Again, it's kind of holistic, so that you're not totally tearing your brain into bits going from one thing to the other. It all kind of links up, but I have developed, there's a painting time practice, so I sort of that's and kind of flow those. I do illustrations because it's a bit of fun. I have two different types of jewellery I do. One is the more kind of illustrative side of things. One is more kind of art jewellery, which is sort of trying to take some of the elements I do in my art objects and make them into art jewellery. And do some commissions and do the odd bit of teaching. So
integrity is the common denominator. What enables you to do the object it allows you to go to these exhibitions.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, I've done some exhibitions, and I've done exhibitions in Northern Ireland as well, which have been really good because they help you develop your practice. And like I'm talking about some exhibitions and project space. I did it in Poland before twice, 2-3 times. I've done it in art spaces across Northern Ireland. And that costs, you do them, the work looks great, you photograph it and everything, but it costs you, a couple of £1,000 to do these things. Maybe you might lose £1,000, because you're making all the stuff, and even I'm making it out of materials and natural materials. I bring in that sometimes, but it's the time, it's weeks of work, and you have to do the promotion of it and everything. That's against time and energy. So you have to, if you want to do exhibition work, you have to sacrifice something. You have to, the Arts Council are great, they will give you grants and help you with buying materials and maybe give you some towards time. But you have to go, right, okay, I really, really want to do this exhibition.
You've done the hard yards, so you can find that.
Yes, so find an exhibition there, make yourself take the time to do the work. And you have to also have that mentality, that's what I want to do. And while you're juggling all the other balls to keep the money going and keep yourself sane, you have to have your ongoing practice. I try and, it gets out of whack every so often in terms of how you keep balance. I would say. There are days when you just keep improving. But generally, you do little things regularly which keep your creative things stimulating, and then when you get these little boxes of time to produce work, you kind of leave one of those, and then you've got all this stuff to draw upon to make the object. So, which is what I did for this one. So, really physical making time, 3 days tops to make work for this. And that was kind of pressure sweating. But I was able to do that because there's lots of little things.
So we do things in common.
I wrote a short list of things that, the business of doing what we do is never talked about as a business. It's talked about as an art and a love and you do it because you want to die for your passion. I'm paraphrasing, slightly, tongue in cheek. And I think that's a big part of why working as a collective is important, because that's not actually the truth. And really we're partly guilty of not speaking our truth as well. So, my shopping list is gone, So, the perception of the cultural industry as we are, arts, culture, leisure and sport. So we're not doing all of that. So this industry of culture has to, as an individual, you've got to make the work, that costs. You've got to market and publicise that. And then, once you've done that, you've got to do things like this, communicate it in a network, go out at night when you write them down in the studio, and a network to go to this. And then, do you know what? In order to keep things moving, you've got to go around and innovate. That word, innovate, so you just so we've been speaking about innovation as a much more organic thing, but you've got to do that so that you continually upskill, because as you both pointed out, it's a journey. The work's not the culmination of 3 weeks' work or a year at a college or a night class. It's decades of constantly asking of yourself, asking of the materials, noticing things, and responding to the context that you're currently in, which is really important. And so you've got to do that, and you've got to upskill, and then you've got to also intellectually be aware of this big European market that seems interesting and attractive. You know, it's a massive big pot which has many, many layers, and you know, you're talking about realistically, people have work in many venues, so that's a lot of money tied up, because they're not always zero return, yes or, you know, and that's expensive. But we don't speak about it like that, and we're called Jewellery Smiths, and so you're lumped in with what used to be Shannon's, the Jewellery Street, which is very different fish.
Well,
so bridging those differences might be very, very important.
It's why my business. And I call it business. I've been in business 25 years now, last month, 25 years in and out of business, well, not by business, but always in it, but working, not working. And I've learnt the hard way, and commissions are my way of being able to continue commissions.
And so, can I interrupt there, because commissions, that's much more important that you have a language, you have a narrative within your work which will hold that commission basis. So that is where actually it's crucial what you do. We don't speak about that particularly, except within that tight relationship of the client and the commissioner, Stuart Cairns himself.
There's overlaps with what I did when I'm talking about doing all the writing and total overlaps with how I approach a commissioner.
So weeks of writing not working in your head, actually we need to be granted ownership there or something. And you said that's totally back. So if you said that in weeks of writing not work, quote on
no, I am talking not benchwork. I really mean not benchwork. Because I don't mean it like that. I am very aware that that was work.
So it's important you say that.
Absolutely. I mean benchwork. That's what I mean. I mean making work. And so I didn't even realise I said that.
That's something you need to be mindful of, and I'm doing it as sort of my SEJ sort of beer not ongoing.
Oh no, don't be
as all of us, we need to be very careful with how we speak.
But don't be under any illusion. I do say to people, I have been busy, I'm working, and I can't be journey because I have writing to do, I just work to do. So no, I'm under no illusions that that's all part of the process. And if you add all your hours up,
Absolutely.
we're not busy here.
I think in terms of the business side of it and what goes into work, you can't have culture and you can't have innovation without grant. And so it's a very long, slow burner in many people's lives. And I suppose that bridge between being designer, maker, craftsperson, and all those titles will put into what we do makes it quite complex.
Sorry, you think you've got a lot of hats. We've got a lot of hats.
So I guess we're probably at our allotted time.
I need to hear from you. Your question, Dan?
In terms of careers, we talked quite a lot about finding time and fitting in and the challenges of Céline and I talked about our approach, and you've had a different background to us because you've been in acting and you've had the demands of former university. And I was wondering how you find doing work for this exhibition with the different demands you have now. So you've now moved from that academic sphere where you would have had the lectures about course and teaching, but it's a different dynamic. I mean, anytime I've been in university, it's quite. There are parts that I quite enjoy is the creativity and the ideas and listening to the students with all their plans and everything. It's quite inspiring. But at the same time, you've got people working on it. You know, so fitting in work on that has that as a challenge. You're not accounting for that, and you're not pursuing your own work. How did you find the difference? Not working now in this new sort of environment.
You know, I'm one of those worries, those pressures of everybody else.
But you have a different set. You have a different set of pressures because you're not in a situation where you have to make things for galleries. You have to do commissions, more pressure commissions. So you're making time is now demanded a lot more. You know, so as we're trying to fit this in.
Yeah, I think what I've had to do for maybe for the 30 years is work to my weaknesses and not my strengths, and that's been very challenging, but also, to be honest, probably quite healthy in some regards, because I'm not a narcissist about my work any longer. I can't afford the time to be, and I've had to be incredibly, or to try to be motivated in order to keep my head sane and also aware of what's going on internationally. I think that's sometimes been a frustration to see that, to have that as my natural language, but not to see it here. And so for me, doing this project was, in fact, I did have to cut my suit to fit my cloth a lot, because when we came up with the project, there was a lot of management within that. So, you know, I was juggling that side of it and the work and the other. So it was still a pleasure, because I've never actually, since my student days, because I went into this quite rapidly after being in London and running a business for a short period and moving back, I've had to leave all that creative side of myself and responding to markets well in the background and give. And that's a very different way. You know, I don't resent it, it's different. And I think the demands on academia between when I started and now, who would go into it? You'd be mad, sorry. Just gone to the bathroom. It's just very, very different, and I think those pressures, you're a secretary, you're a psychologist, you're everything, and I'm a motivator with people that sometimes really want to be there. And largely, I think what I would have noticed is that schools are no longer allowed the free rein to indulge in the art curriculum in the way that it needs to be. Because you mentioned earlier, saying that you learn romance through actually doing. I learned to conquer being badly dyslexic, which takes on numbers as well as letters, and have had to immerse myself in lots of academia and writing. I can now write. Okay, it takes me much longer. Very bad at summarising, but a lot better than I used to be. So, you know, there are a lot of things I paid a price for. So when I was able to sit and just make work, it was just like, wow!
The great attributes for now.
I think they serve me well in others. So I've just got a very different skill set now. But what was nice was to go back to just letting the project go and not have those interruptions. Because it's constant. You never have time to do anything real for yourself. And I think there were something like 3 or 4 weeks in the summer, because the rest was all meetings. Nobody can do anything of any quality unless they've already got that under their belt or some other way of supporting that. And have that, so you know that's where it was
in my practice as well, just with life, and it's very frustrating because this feeling that, you know, this going away and letting it settle and letting it distill in your head. And you're constantly being disturbed and being pulled this way, and you've forgotten that little essence that you had, and hence that's why I sat and I wrote it all down. So
why it's important.
And you did the same.
I had to take it in snippets, I'm being honest. But what was lovely was you could actually take a material, because I would be very much driven through materials, and I'm not very good. I don't mean this really in language terms, but if we transfer the word slattern into I am a material softer if you like. If it's right for what I'm trying to do, then I will use it. And so it goes from precious metals. Love 22 carat. Probably would indulge myself in that much more if I had finances, but don't. But I love linen. Haven't used it for many years. I love plastics, which is a bit tag at the moment, but that's actually not plastic's fault. Last time I checked, it's only a material. And so I could work in linen threads, I could work in pearls, are another big weakness. And to me, it's all about the language I'm trying to steer it towards. And what I found was I could have gone 10 million different ways in this project, but again, it's a little bit the constraints of time pull you back to saying something that you want to say clearly. And so that's what I did try to do. So I did actually use the linen. There were a few of us that didn't we, Céline? And I felt for me, the history of what I learned about the bias in our books, quite shocking. And quite pulled me up a lot and made me start to question and almost, I felt a bit gaslit what some of the books wrote about our history and our industry. And then you go to the back and you look at the credits and actually the book was funded by or it's written for this audience. And it sort of brings it home to, you've got to really do an awful lot more research to understand your own industrial heritage, which I find fascinating, and how our culture is the way it is. Because we do have issues in our culture and how we, I suppose, support and generate and listen to each other. And that's a really open area for me to start looking at again, because whether it's linen, whether it's jewellery, whether it's ceramics, whether it's glass, doesn't actually matter. It's still the industry of making, and we're all involved in the same thing, and we all have to survive and make money. It's not true to say that somebody's commercial so they want to make more or less. Everybody has to stay afloat in some way, and I think that's going to be a much bigger issue as we're going into the current economic recession for everybody. So being inventive, surviving and being creative with something that is pretty meagre, £3 beads, might become more and more important for all of us. So it's what you're trying to say with the language of it, where I find the real value and preciousness lies. And so I guess I make collars and cuffs because I do have very slight memories of that being something my grandfather wore a collar and took it off at home. And my grandmother was very into fashion and would have had, but it was part of the fashion where you would have a white collar that you put on your Sunday best suit and you could take it off again. It was very hip and trendy and Chanel-like. And we don't do that anymore, so I kind of took it free rein and decided that I would look at the preciousness of putting something as white linen on as an adornment piece to elevate an ordinary outfit. And I'm very determined to do that, and I stuck my pearls in there. But instead of treating them in a way where I would silk thread them or make metal through them, they're all pins and needles. So everything's done out of that history of workmanship. So the pins and needles are manipulated in order to make links or catches, and or the pearls make the catch, and the thread's used for its qualities, which I didn't notice when I was trying to spin on our trip to the museum, and I broke all our thread, but never mind. When you work with material, you notice behaviours and habits, and I haven't learned how to because I don't things with my teeth instead of taking the scissors out. But you could feel that gummy feel to the linen when it was passing through your fingers. So your head clicks and you go, well, you must be able to do that. And so going away and investigating those forms it would create without any starch. It was quite fascinating, but that's left on purpose because I'm called unfinished. Because there's too much more to do to it in the time frame to get it to a stage where I as an artist might be completely happy with it. So they're little, I guess, punctuation marks to say, right, that's interesting. There's something in there, we don't know what it might be, is it layered, what could it be used for? And to me those magic accidents are where innovations in my head and thinking and happenings occur. So all the reading and all the rationalising is important, but equally you have to get your hands into it. You can't make it real until you do it. And they come together through the material and the way you think about it. So I think it's It's a little bit like Stuart's process, and a little bit like yours, where there's a degree of organisation, but there's also the openness to accident, because it's not aligned. It has that, where it rears its head up and goes, I'm not going to play ball with you the way you thought. You said it, did it? Stuart, you said it, did it?
Yeah.
I know it does it. So our job is, maybe as a maker, it's to have the antennae and respect for what you're working with, to listen to it. And it's like that circular loop of you listen, you think about it, you put it in a context, you figure out where its application might be, and you go and you work in that direction. And if it doesn't currently work, it sits on the shelf for that. To that moment, right? You go away, you go, oh flip, that's what it was. But your head has to be able to, I know I frequently do describe it as, my head's a bit like a filing cabinet and there's a load of crap in there. But sometimes the most amazing accidents, meaning that little bits that you thought were rubbish, pop out and go, right, oh gosh, I remember that feeling, or I remember that reading that once, or
I think that's
to me that's quite important.
About constantly working with the mental, and that's the way my business has gone. And that's what people are asking me to make, because that's what they know me for. But it is that you have to control the mental, and always that controlled space on your bench, that it's always about getting it right.
You had a big question.
Yeah, that was what we, I know what your jewellery is like, and it's really tight and designed, and this is just totally not that. So what I was really interested was, how do you think the experience of making these pieces, how is that going to influence your future work? In terms of, is it going to influence? Do you think it's going to influence your production work? Or is it going to push you to do more crazy exhibition type work and like opportunities there?
Question to you. Yes, I absolutely loved doing this. I needed it. I wanted it. I did jump into it to use different methods to leave behind what, as I said, the stress of what I'd done. The stress of the technical side of things and everything was lovely to just to not have that. I loved the use of colour, because I don't really use colour in my pieces. I had to really think about the colours and why I'm using those colours, and again, you see that I'm sort of quite limited in my colours as well. I can't take in too much of a palette. That's all, after just working with metal all the time. So I think that what I would like is an amalgamation of what I do for everything. And this work, I have made bigger pieces. Let's talk about scale or whatever. I mean, that was lovely to work with scale. I've done that before. I've had to really think about the materials as well, but I've still stuck with metal. I've still used just lesser metal, not precious metal. So that would be where I've come from. I think that's where I'm going to go into. I also do workshops as well out in the community, and it has opened it up a bit for me as well to loosen up. Now again, it's really dependent on who you're doing these workshops for and whatnot, but I'm going to be applied for a workshop which I've gotten, a project, and I am going to be taking elements of this and using this in my community workshops.
Fantastic.
Yes, I also wanted to say something there about this work that I did. I used brass for an exhibition down in Dublin, in Ireland. Some of us are here. And again, I wanted to do something big for that, something more, something scale-wise, scale it up. And I used brass, as I say, so the material costs were down. Now the making took an awful long time to make what I did. But it's funny that they didn't really know what to do with it. It was a necklace that moved. There was movement in it again. I think my movement that you speak about is more, I love interaction. I love people interacting with my pieces. They boxed it, put it in the frame. Now it actually looks well in the frame, but it's losing the movement. I thought they might wanted to work with me to get some way of doing this. This is a changeable, I like to give people value for money. This particular pendant can be broken down and made into a bigger necklace. So I mean, that's why doing this necklace it's not 100 miles away from where I was before, but this big necklace. So I had given all the information to the Made in Ireland judges, people that were choosing pieces, and I connected this particular piece once it was broken down from the pendant with safety pins, nickel safety pins, cheap little safety pins. It meant something to me. There was a reason to use safety pins. It was about safety. It was about looking back into memories from my past, from growing up when my mum had pincushions full of safety pins, be the pink-headed ones and blue-headed ones and whatever. So there was a reason for doing this. I was asked, could I make pins for this piece? Could I actually make something more precious, something that fits in with the jewellery? So there you go. That's not a very nice experience of sort of trying to do that crossover.
Yeah.
And that's what. So there is a learning curve for us. There's a learning curve for our audience, and there's a learning curve for those that should know better.
So do you think that, I suppose we're running out of time, but I still think it's an important point that if you have one wish within that context moving forward from the arts council, whoever, or the craft or the public or whatever, what would your aspiration be to change that conversation in the future?
That's a good question, because it's been an
concise.
ongoing thing for as long as I'm in business, and there's always I often say that I feel that the Crafts Council of Ireland, you might disagree with me, but moved with us. When I lived in Dublin, it grew with us. It learnt its mistakes as well. There was things not done right and things done right. There's a lot of learning to do.
So you think that from the bottom up, would that make more sense? Because I think that's one of the initial reasons people we came together as we are, was because generally the consensus was that the artists, the makers, the jewellers, the smiths would rather have a voice to say what they need rather than the other way around. Is that?
Well, I do think
having
a maker in those positions, I can think of Jan and yourself as well. That understanding from a maker's point of view will go a long way. Possibly people in those positions that have a background in making.
So the future might be slightly brighter then? That's good.
I would possibly think so, yes. I would possibly think so. I would hope. The future is quite frightening at the minute.
But we're creative, we will be resourceful and valuable.
We have to be. We have to.
Yeah. Stuart, do you have any kind of one wish moving forward that Tinkerbell? Lottery, did you know that under his breath?
I think probably I like people making to be valued and understood better. I think think. And I think probably getting that across in high schools, get that across into the students. And also the students and the parents, so people understand that it's something they can do, that it's of great value, to understand how to make things, how materials work, whether you go on to make yourself or not. And also that means also it gives the opportunity for new makers to come in to the industry, to the area. But also means when people come and encounter us, whoever we are, whatever we're doing, they have an understanding of the value of what we do. Because a lot of criticism, people don't as easily understand what we're about, and it's just because they haven't encountered it before. So that's sort of what we're trying to. I think we're trying to do with these exhibitions. I certainly am trying to do when I get my work out there. It's just show people what's possible. Show people that things can be interesting, can be different. And what they expect.
And can I just say seamlessly, and I know we've very short time, but it sort of just led into that question of mine, SNI, which you have a huge part in creating. How do you think that our aspirations will help in this?
Well, I personally, I suppose having one voice, a bigger voice as a collective is the key, because you have more strength with a collective voice. And also it helps, this is an example, it helps motivate and push your own aspirations ahead, and that is something that's quite important, because we could be out in Germany, we could be off in America, we could be off in England, as you've done, which is a fantastic coup. And there could be more makers joining that, because it exists here. But again, I agree with Stuart, it is, my concerns are that making is not valued. I can see that, and I can see, even when I was in academia, you would get new students through who came with so many issues, who didn't need to have these issues. They'd just never been allowed to be or learn through the route that suited them best. And so their morale was awful, their sense of self was dreadful, and it took a long time to work against that. 3 years wasn't anywhere near enough, but you had to achieve it somehow in order to make them transition to human beings that it's really important to give back to their community or the industry. And I think for me, a part of this group and its remit is to educate not just school kids but also adults, because the adults are the ones who also steer the kids away from doing subjects. The schools are so tied into this STEM subject agenda, which misses the role of art and design as an innovation centre and help and creative thinking, and the haptic qualities of using your hands and using your intellect to adjust, which happens through dentistry, surgery. You could go on ad nauseum, and it's been so sidelined in the curriculum in order for the schools to tick the boxes.
Absolutely.
And so it's actually driven by so many other agendas beyond our remit, that all we can do is take small steps and try to allow any of those kids that might find they're learning more magic through doing. Try to get at them, try to encourage them, and try to encourage the parents in the schools to see the potential of art within science. It exists within science. You learn to look with detail. You learn to assess information. You learn to read things objectively. I mean, what is not to learn through art and design, as I've always said since we did Leonardo's drawings for everything else in the museum. If you were alive today, where would he be? Probably shoved at the back of the classroom as a difficult room. They'd have to get a special needs teacher in, which is just dreadful. It isn't a special need, it's actually a way of learning. So, I don't know if that answers the question, but it's a big question, and we can only bring forward, you can't be what you can't see. And so I guess the first thing we have to do is be out there, which we are doing, and be seen. and just take it a step at a time, because we can't change the world in one night. So I think that's my
Well, can I leave, if we're finished, if I could leave on a very a good note, if anybody else has anything to say. My granny's tablecloth will be coming out tomorrow for our dining room table, which is back in action for my mum and dad's 60th wedding anniversary.
Yay!
So, Lynn.
Well done, man.
Granny would be delighted.
It's a